Hi, greetings. It's me, Dr. Paul Gerhardt, and today I want to talk about adapted challenges. And in the business world, whether or not you're working for an organization that's nonprofit or for profit, there's always going to be a need for change. We know that. We've seen it over and over again. Nothing stays the same. Let's face it. These days, we're in a global competition for the greatest talent and to make sure that we get our products or services out there, or to get stakeholders to invest in us before they invest in our competition. And so, in order to stay on top of things, organizations must always change in order to keep customers happy and make sure that we're staying on top of what the customers' needs actually are. And it makes me think about the years that I worked as in the grocery industry as a retail manager. And sometimes we would have customers come in and ask for a product that we don't carry or that I've never heard of before. And maybe it's something called capers. I'd never heard of capers before. And I had to do research and ask other people, where would we get capers and how can we get them? And I thought, you know what, we've never had customers ask for capers before, but let's give it a try. Anyway, so bringing in the product, whether it be capers or whatever it is, you're usually find that because one customer had a need for it, that other people found that we had what they were looking for, and then they started choosing us. And because they hadn't seen it there before, they would start asking for other products that they hadn't seen before, and that would bring in other customers who would purchase those products too. And before you knew it, we started building a clientele because we had what customers were looking for. Pretty simple concept. And I think it's kind of that way in any industry where you have your staples, things that you're known for, and you got to deliver those well. And if you look at using a SWOT analysis model, if you know what your strengths are, you have to continue providing resources and money and time and experts in that area of your strengths. In the areas where you have weaknesses, you got to do things. You got to figure out what those weaknesses are, first of all, and then you've got to make sure that you're allocating whatever it takes to make those weaknesses no longer a weakness for you. And so attitude has a lot to play in it. You know, if I had the attitude that we have never carried it before in the past and we're not going to carry it in the future and we're doing just fine, I would probably would have been giving customers a reason to choose somebody else. But because I had the attitude of, let's give it a try, I didn't realize that we had this challenge or this problem, and so let's address it by giving it a try and bringing some in. And that's a general attitude that I think leaders at every single organization need to have, at every level of the organization need to have. People at the very top know or should know that they don't know everything. They have to know the general mechanics of the systems that are going on. But they also have to understand that they've got people at every level that they've hired and continue to hire because they know things that other people don't know, and they're experts in their areas. And so there's got to be some trust that's there. And you can't always dictate, just because you're a leader, how things go. You have to protect people when they want to try things differently and be bold about saying, you know what, are we giving enough resources and allocating time, and do we have the right people in the right places in order to support what our leaders have chosen? And that's not always easy to do, because a lot of times when you put something new on somebody's plate, that means other things might get weaker. And if you know that someone is already taxed with too much, the right thing to do, instead of cutting off an arm, shooting yourself in the foot, or whatever analogy you want to use, you might think about bringing more people in to support that. I mean, I can't imagine as a grocer dedicating hiring another manager just to bring in capers. That wouldn't make any more sense, to make sure the capers were always filled. But maybe bringing someone in to make sure that we have the right products on hand at all times, so that our customers aren't looking for other products elsewhere. And that's kind of an interesting analogy, because people are a resource. And if you're not supporting people with putting them on projects and tasks that really feed their souls, they might start looking elsewhere. And when you lose somebody that's been with your organization for a long time and that are good at what they're doing, it's really hard to replace them. You might be able to fill the job, but it takes at least 2 years before a person becomes really proficient to the point of where they're as good as the person that they've replaced. And so you can't measure the losses that take place in that time. People are always going to make mistakes. And you could put the best foot forward by making sure that people have the right training, because sometimes a person that is outgoing won't have enough time to efficiently train all the new person with all the nuances of the systems that took place, that are in place. And sometimes the people being people, they may not want that person to be as good as them. And very often, people will sabotage the organization in some minor way before they go. And they're leaving the organization for a very good reason. And sometimes it's their boss's fault that they're losing a good person, because they didn't treat people the way that they needed to be treated. And that's why, you probably heard me say, if you've listened to a lecture before, that the golden rule really is BS. The platinum rule, treating people as they wish to be treated, is so important. Organizations are living, breathing beings in itself, and each person makes up an organ, if you will, or a cell at least, of the organization, depending on how big it is. And when you poison any cell of a body, your body is a little bit weaker. And so with that analogy, the organization is a little bit weaker when people aren't their best. And we're creative creatures. We want to constantly grow. It's kind of human nature to want to grow. And it's even best if an organization says, yes, we hired you to do this, but what else do you want to do that we can grow you in? So if you want to have a healthy organization that will easily change, you've got to be supporting your people the right way, and doing things like giving professional development in areas where people want to grow in, and creating jobs for people so that they can be their very best. If they understand the product and services and culture of the organization, and they're a good fit in that way, and you should be hiring for fit in that way because they are in alignment with organizational values, then you need to make sure that you're giving them the resources so that they can survive. And that includes hiring new people to help make sure that they continue to grow if they're a good fit for the organization. And so when a need to change happens, and that is every day, you've got a culture that easily shifts because people love their jobs and they recognize that change doesn't have to be hard because they've got the right systems in place where people together as a team want to change. So change is always going to happen. And you have to be constantly looking for needs to change and hearing the stakeholders that are involved asking for the changes. And then you've got to be able to give the support for it. And then you've got to protect the people who are willing to take the risks to make the change work. And too often we give up on change that seems like it's too hard in organizations, but failing to stick with a change that really is needed would be just like uh, letting go of a strength in an organization, and therefore you're making your organization a little bit weaker. Don't know if that makes total complete sense to you. But the bottom line is change is always going to happen, and it's always showing, you're always going to see a need for change. But if you don't have the right culture in place to support that change and the right people to make that change happen, you're probably going to find that your organization is going to grow weaker and weaker, like a virus in a body. And you've got to do things to make the organization strong, or else, just like in any organization, you might have to cut off a limb in order to keep the rest of the organization strong. And then you're going to have to find some way to adapt to not having that limb. I know it's a gross analogy, but it really is true. Change needs to be supported right, and people need to be empowered, and people need to want to change. And you can't change human nature, but you can help create an environment that's healthy where people will see a need for change and embrace it because they know they're going to be supported properly. And that's going to keep people motivated. If people don't feel like they're going to have the right support in place, you're just going to be shooting yourself in the foot. All right, that's enough of my analogies. Thanks so much for your valuable time. Have a great day. Only you get to choose how you feel about it.